Forgive me for all of my sins. And this is what the Bible says. You say it's too good. I agree. It is too good. Take the goodness of God. Taste and see that the Lord is good. He's good. I'm interrupting this show with a special announcement. We have a new pope, and he's St. Francis. His parents are Italian. According to the Malachi prophecy, the last pope would be Roman. Also, he's the first Jesuit pope, and next week you'll find out how the Jesuits are involved in the last days. Hello, Sid Roth here. Welcome to my world, where it's naturally supernatural. Last week, we found out about these amazing prophecies buried in the Vatican. 900 years ago, what would happen to each pope all the way up to the last pope. On this show, we're going to continue, and we're going to talk about the Vatican's secret plans for welcoming an alien God with a small g under the reign of the last pope. Well, last week we talked about the Saint Malachi. And Chris, I have to ask you, does the Pope know about these prophecies? Do the cardinals know about these prophecies? What do they think of them?
Well, Sid, there's actually a lot of evidence that they do take it very seriously. In fact, Pope Pius XII, who was the Pope during World War II, he actually produced a documentary film about himself, and the title of the film is the Malachi motto for his papacy, Angelic Shepherd. He actually titled the film after the Malachi prophecy's prediction for him. So he not only endorsed it, he claimed it.
Okay, Tom, as just a short review, what, based on the prophecies out of the Vatican that were hidden for all these generations, are they anticipating with the final pope?
Well, the idea among both Catholics and Protestant scholars is that he will be the final pope. He is the one who is going to be residing over the Vatican as it enters into the Great Tribulation period. And there's also the belief among even some of the Catholic mystics that he might be a false pope, an anti-pope, somebody who helps give rise to the Antichrist.
Let me tell you something. Judaism, Christianity, and other religions have focused on the year 2012. You know, remember the Mayan prediction, the end of the world in 2012? So everyone's discounted all of that, but that's not exactly what the prediction said. What did it say?
In the conferences where I spoke last year, I kept telling people, don't say it's the end of the world. That's not what the Maya said. That's not what the Aztecs said. That's not what the Cherokee Indians said, all of whose calendar rolled over at the end of 2012. What was it that they were saying? They were saying 2012 was the end of an era, and 2013 marks a new dispensation. Now, the Maya said some things that were very interesting. They said it would be marked by the emergence of two great male figures who would emerge upon the earth. They sound very much like they're talking about the false prophet and the Antichrist. They talked about their god Bolyon Yakteku, the spirit of it, coming up from out of the underworld. Now, what does this god do? He guards the bones and the seed of the giants that are in the underworld, and that spirit would begin to rise in the year 2013, giving birth even to a new form of humanity.
You're talking about what I've read about and pondered so many times in the Bible. Maybe you've read this about the Nephilim, where the sons of God cohabited with the daughters of humans and produced great giants. That's what it sounds like to me.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. And furthermore, turn of the century preachers, including Jonathan Edwards, marked the year 2012 to 2016 as the date when the false prophet and the Antichrist would appear. Dozens of Protestant reformers marked these years hundreds of years ago. Not only that, and you appreciate this with your Jewish ministries, the Zohar, one of the most important books of Jewish Kabbalah ever written.
It is accepted in traditional Judaism as coming from God. It's not all from God, I can tell you as a fact, but it's an interesting situation that it talks about?
In a section of the Zohar called Signs Heralding Mashiach, the coming of the Messiah, they marked the year 5773, which in the Jewish calendar began in September 2012 and comes through into this year, 2013, and said that was the time. In fact, much of the prophecy sounds almost identical to the prophecy of the popes. It is a time that will lead to the destruction of Rome, and more importantly, they said, at that time, Messiah will begin making himself known to the nations of the world. This 700 years ago prophesied that between 2012 to 2013, the emergence of the Messiah would appear on earth, almost an identical parallel to cultures around the world that for thousands of years saw these dates specifically as the time when the end times would begin.
Speaking of end times, many of you are familiar with the apparitions of Mary and Fatima and people going there and being healed, but it's not exactly the way we've been told, is it, Chris?
No, it's not. What would happen if there was a massive UFO sighting? Well, what happened in Fatima, Portugal in 1917 was really just that, in my opinion. Now, up to 70,000 people gathered in a field, supposedly to see an apparition of the Virgin Mary. But if you go and read the descriptions of what people call the miracle of the sun, they actually describe seeing a gray, silvery disk rotating around in the sky and kind of putting a cascade of colors, like a rainbow of colors. And so it really, in 1917, no one had vocabulary of words like flying saucer.
Right.
But that's exactly what it sounds like they're describing to me.
Yeah, I've always thought Mary just appeared in the sky.
It really wasn't Mary at all. They're talking about a sphere or a silver disc.
And that same flying saucer, let's call it for what it is, demonic. According to my notes here, in 1950, Pope Pius XII saw the same thing. Explain.
Well, what's interesting about the Marian dogmas, and all these things that we don't see in the Bible, is that the theology has sort of escalated over time. Now, in 1950, Pope Pius saw a sphere over the Vatican gardens, the same sort of thing that you hear about at Fatima. Now, this sighting of this opaque sphere, flying saucer, UFO, inspired him to define a new doctrine that all Catholics have to believe, and that is that Mary ascended into heaven just like Jesus does in Acts chapter 1.
Wait till you find their research of what the Vatican is ready to announce in reference to end time Bible prophecy and in reference to aliens coming to planet Earth. We'll be right back. As far as I'm concerned, I'm being blown out of the water, and a lot of my end time thinking is the whole paradigm is changing in light of the Bible prophecy that you're bringing to us. Tell me about the Vatican Conference of a gathering of scientists to discuss extraterrestrial activity.
Certainly. In 2009, the Vatican sponsored an astrobiology conference.
And that means?
That is the study of life in space. Now, what makes that interesting is that we don't really know of any life in space, yet our universities have programs where you can study this. They had the top secular scientists in the world come to Rome for this conference in 2009. We're talking about, atheists, secular scientists, and the sort of topics that they're covering, things like shadow life, exoplanets.
What's an exoplanet?
An exoplanet is a planet that's outside of our solar system.
Okay.
So you have the top scientists in the world gathering in Rome for the Pontifical Academy of Sciences, an audience for the Pope to study life in space.
Speaking of studying life in space, how about life on Earth? Tom, tell me about the hybrid humans.
This is one of the things that I didn't even expect would arrive in our study. There is academics who actually believe that there is a hybridity program that is going on right now. And this took me on a kind of a long journey that brought me back to one question, Sid, and that is why in ancient days when the giants, the first original hybrid humans, right, when they were created by fallen angels and were upon the earth, what was their mission, what was their program? It also had to do with hybridity, and it also had to do with misleading and misguiding and even challenging God himself. But notice that the oldest descriptions of those giants, how tall tall they were, 20 feet, 30 feet. They would be easy to pick up, right? There's a movie out there right now, Jack the Giant Slayer, and it's kind of based on that mythos that exists in every culture around the world. They tell the story. The gods came down. The gods mingled themselves with humans. They took human genetics, animal genetics. They created a hybrid body. Now the question is, down through time, the Bible tells us there were giants in those days and also after that. So now we get past the flood, and you have the Og, the king of Bashan. What is he, 12 feet tall? He's certainly not 20 or 30. And it looks to me like there was an intentional breeding down in size of these hybrid humans until today they could possibly be walking among us, and we might not even know that we see them. There are academics who actually believe now that they are walking among us, that they're even in government. Now, that sounds astonishing. Sounds like a sci-fi movie, right?
It does. In fact, why is Hollywood glamorizing all these things at the same time?
Well, that's exactly right. So is that part of a setup? Are there occultists in Hollywood that have an agenda to try to help prepare humanity for what could be a kind of great deception?
Genesis 6:9 talks about Noah. Explain that.
Our research led us to believe that something that happened in ancient days could be occurring even now as we speak. And when I say ancient days, I'm talking about the days of Noah, a time when all of the ancient records from around the world tell us that very powerful angels came down and they mingled with humans and with animals.
The best record is